biggest problem with this idea of Advaita Yoga with the idea that there's nothing to do, nothing to arrive at, nothing that you're waiting to have happen. And more problematically, nothing that I can do, really, as a teacher, to help. So the question is, why come together at all? I can only tell you that at the very core of this being is an urge to help, a desire to help. I saw it in Rudy. I mean, Rudy was the consummate teacher. He only wanted to teach, and he took advantage of every single opportunity to provide a teaching. In a way, I never walked out of his presence without having learned something or come to know something. But when you tell people you're already what you're looking for, and that you can't attain anything, it seems to me so frustrating to hear that. And this idea of seeking to awaken, seeking enlightenment, creates its own obstruction. And the primary obstruction, of course, is that the person who is seeking and who is wanting can't have it. So, what do you do? How do you have a spiritual life reaching for something that you can't get? And how does a teacher work to provide help of any nature? These are real questions that I ask myself a lot. I asked Arkady once, I said, why do you keep coming here? And he very specifically said, instinct, which for me was a very powerful response. I went to Rudy's for 7 years. We would go 4 or more times a week to sit. And we would sit with enormous urgency. And I thought, if I just asked a little bit harder, I will arrive at this place of permanent brilliance, light, illumination, everything I had dreamt of. And I had enormous experience with Rudy, enormous. I mean, I would sit in his class, I would take a breath and I would hold it, and the next thing I knew, I was just flooded with light, or with powerful, powerful energy. I would often fall on the floor, I'd often be in spasms. I felt a fullness that went way beyond my physical body. I felt a sense of touching the universe at its very core. I loved Rudy so much that when I would go to kiss him goodbye, he'd be sitting in a chair over here talking to all the students, and people would be leaving at various points, and I had to get home, and I would go over and I would go like that. I would just lean over and give him a kiss on the neck, and I was lying on the floor. And I would go, and finally I'd kind of sit up and go, well, I've got to try that again. And I would get up and I would try to go, goodbye, Rudy. And I'd be on the floor, and finally I just gave up kissing him. I just walked out the door, and I walked out the door because what else was I to do? And I would walk home through the streets of New York feeling that I was walking through paradise, that I was in heaven, that it doesn't get better than this. Everyone I looked at was angelic. Everyone I saw was a reflection of self. Everyone was truly beautiful. I would get home and happy to see my wife and happy to see my baby. And it was remarkable. And all I could imagine is heaven would be like this all the time. And how do I get to there all the time? And I kept thinking, well, if I hold my breath longer, it'll expand. But after a minute, you can't go any further. You can't do anything else. And sometimes I would hold my breath and the explosions of energy would happen and Kundalini would surge up my spine and I would be out in some sort of heavenly realm. But I always kept coming back to this. No matter how far out I got, no matter how beautiful it was, no matter how remarkable my journeys, I kept coming back to this. And every time I came back to this, I thought, I'm such a failure. I can't sustain it. I can't keep myself in this unbelievable heavenly realm. And what is wrong with me? 40 years of that, and you really begin to feel like it's never going to happen, and you're defective material. Something is basically ultimately wrong with you. And at one point I just said, maybe I'm studying the wrong work, and I should try something else. And so I decided to go to a 10-day Vipassana retreat, silent retreat in Northern California. And I go there and I sat for 4 days. I had a sciatic problem. I didn't know it until I tried sitting for 4 days. And I was like on fire, burning in so much pain. And I finally said, well, I flunked Vipassana yoga. And I packed my bags and I walked to the bungalow where the leaders were residing, and I said, I'm sorry, I failed. I can't do this. And I'm leaving. And they said, well, let me put it this way to you. You're in the middle of an operation and the sutures are hanging out everywhere and you're walking away. This is not good. Not a good thing. And you're going to be unhappy. And so I went, okay. They said, look, sit in a chair if you want instead of on the floor. Try anything you can do. Lie down if you have to. But just be there. I said, okay. And I trundled with my little suitcase back to my little bed. And I stayed for the next 6 days. And it was agony. It was agony. And not at any point did I feel I had gotten any closer with 10 days of meditation than I did with my morning meditation. I mean, of course, you reach periods of, this is nice, this is quiet. Basically, it would be when I stopped trying, when I stopped struggling. I would just sit there and go, I give up, I can't do this. And I would go, this feels good. And I would just sit like that. And I would sit like that for an hour, 2 hours, and go. But I knew it wasn't meditation, it was just sitting feeling good. And the last day, we were allowed to talk. And so a lot of dialogue started happening with everybody after 9 days of no dialogue. And one guy came to me and he said that he'd been doing this for 10 years, and he had been in 60 retreats, and some of them were for months on end. And he said he doesn't even listen to what they're teaching in Vipassana. He just goes because they provide a free room and food, and he can sit. And that's what he likes to do. And he told me that he doesn't believe in any of these practices, that what he does is something taught by a guy named Ramesh Balsekar. The book he wrote was called Consciousness Speaks. He said, you really should get that. So the one thing I took away from 10 days of sitting was I got this book and I started reading it, and it was like the beginning of what I've been talking about here for the last 2 years or more. It was, you are that thing that you want to be. But he kept saying it in a way that was really intriguing to me, but I couldn't get over the edge. I couldn't get the feeling of it. It was like, yes, you're right, but then I thought, well, maybe he has a teacher. I should look at his teacher. His teacher's name was Nisargadatta Maharaj, and he wrote a book called I Am That. So I picked up I Am That, and the moment I even read the back page, the jacket, and then I read the first pages inside, I went, this guy takes me there. This guy doesn't just talk about it, he actually takes me to the next step. And I couldn't hold on to it for very long, but I knew I was in the presence of a real teaching. I then discovered, by chance, The Power of Now. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle was lying on someone's bed. I picked it up, I started reading it, and I went, oh, this is like Nisargadatta. This is like I Am That, only it's Nisargadatta light. It turned out it was just Nisargadatta simplified in a wonderful way. And I started reading that book and I thought, I get this, I get it. It's talking to me. And he ended up teaching just 5 minutes from my house here, at Omega. So we gathered a whole group of us and we all went to Omega, and the minute this man walked into the room and started talking, I felt, whew, wow, finally. And I didn't know what to do with Rudy. I didn't know what to do with my practice, but I knew just let it go for now and just listen to what's being said. And it was really Eckhart who said very clearly, nothing you're looking for is in the future. And that was really important to me because everything I've been looking for was in the future. Everything. It was always about then, there, somewhere down the road. And so that became very important to me. And I took 2 5-day seminars with him. And then, it's a long story, but I got an email from a guy who wanted me to look at a videotape about 3 awakened guys. And I went, oh, well, I wasn't all that interested in kind of a video coming over the internet, but I said, okay, send it, I'll take a look at it. And there were 3 guys who were like all of us. They were just seekers, they were just regular guys, and 2 of them just started talking and they bored me to death. And I went, oh, yikes. But then they started at the end of their talk to talk about the awakening itself. And the minute they did that, I could feel it. I could feel it in them. And then the 3rd guy started talking, named Bart Marshall. And he was a soldier in Vietnam. And in Vietnam, he was under attack, and a bomb went off right beside him, blew him into the air. He landed with almost everything in place, little shrapnel. But while he was in the air and coming down, he had an awakening. He saw the infinite. And then he wanted to know, what do I do with this? And he started practicing, looking, searching for years, and met various teachers, a guy named Mr. Rose, a guy named Harding. And one day, he was coming back from England on a plane after he met this guy Harding. And as he was sitting on the plane, he found himself. It just happened. Everything else fell away. Bart Marshall fell away. He was who he was. And I could tell in reading and listening and hearing his voice that this was someone I wanted to talk to. And we got on the phone, and all he could tell me was that he had a screenplay he wanted me to read. And I went, oh my God. Enlightenment and screenplays. It didn't go together for me. But I decided to fly down to North Carolina, where he was. Actually went to Chesapeake Bay, where he had a private home. And we talked for 4 days and didn't stop. And it was one of the most pure conversations I've ever had. It was like talking to myself, and it was like there were no 2. He asked if I would come lecture at his not private, but he had these public lectures, and he had these gatherings every year for enlightened people. People either who wanted to be enlightened or groups of people who would talk. And I said, well, I'm not enlightened, but I'd be happy to come. And he wanted me to talk to them. So I gave a talk on what we do, Kundalini Yoga, and I gave a class of Kundalini Yoga to all of these people, many of whom were awakened souls. And it was fascinating to me because, first of all, that there were so many awakened souls who don't sit in the Himalayas, who are not living on a mountaintop, who are like regular people, But you can tell when you talk to them that they're not like everyone else on some level. I mean, they are. They're very much like everyone else, but they are that some remarkable way. So I gave a class to everybody, and the thing that I realized in giving the class was that awakening in no way opened your chakras. It in no way made you a more whole human being. It no more made you a better person. I said to someone the other day, there's this thing in Zen Buddhism: before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Well, I said, before enlightenment, schmuck. After enlightenment, schmuck. You don't change very much. There isn't that much, except that everything is internally, there's no you there. The second year that I went to talk at this, that I was invited back again, and I had been really aware now that I knew something they didn't know, and they knew something I didn't know. And I was listening to a talk by a guy named Paul Hederman, who has a website called Zen Bitch Slap. And he was talking, and I couldn't understand a word he was saying. But it was all brilliant. I mean, it was brilliant. It just kept going so fast. He talked with such velocity that I couldn't put it together. My mind wouldn't put it together. And after he was done talking, I looked around and I said, something is missing. And what was missing was Bruce. Bruce had just gotten washed away. And there was just this, whatever this is. And I didn't even know what to say. I said, thank you. He said, great, man, great. I said, something happened. He said, great. And I went and saw Bart, who was there, and Bart started crying. And a whole bunch of people started crying. So I started crying. And I cried for like 2 days. It was so simple. It was so simple. There was just this. There was just this, and there was no one having this. There was no one to whom this was happening. It was just happening. It's been a long journey since then, and I've documented a lot of it on the talks that I've given here, and I've including what I just told you. But I wanted to bring you to this moment because this is all there is. This is what is, right now. And I've said it 1,000,000 times, and that's why I get frustrated as a teacher. What can I say to you? This is what is. You're it. There's nothing else but this. If your mind goes but, then you're not in gear with that. And I understand that. A lot of people will go but there's no but. You're just, this is it. It's the most remarkable space, the most remarkable unfolding truth imaginable. And all I want to do is share it. That's all I want to do. I want to share it with anybody who arrives in this space or anyone who comes in the vicinity. And what do you do? How do you share this? Every single person who arrives here is in a completely different place. Every one of you is unique and absolutely yourself. Every one of you has a different configuration. Your mind has a different idea of who you are. Everyone has a different idea of who they are. And every one of you thinks you're separate from everybody else. Some of you have had these satoris, these moments of and you don't really want to leave them, but you do. Or they leave you. Suddenly they're not there. How do you talk people into satori? What do you do? How do you talk them into that which goes beyond satori, and which gives them an awakening that just is always there? I think a lot of people try, and a lot of people in the awakened community don't even try. They just figure, it'll happen when it happens. Good luck. Pursue this with some vigor, because pursuing it doesn't get you there. That's the weird thing. Pursuing it with a vengeance basically keeps you in a state of vengeance. It actually obstructs you in many ways. Not trying to get there also doesn't do very much. So what's that fine line of wanting and letting go at the same time? What is that? Well, I'll tell you what it feels like. It feels like what you experience when you come here and sit in the class. Somewhere during this class, for every person in it, there is a moment. For some of you it's more than a moment, some of you it's like a flash. But there is a moment where it's like, often it's when I close my eyes at the end and basically say the meditation's over. That's like one of the best moments for most people. It's like, oh, thank God. And there is a kind of a, and they really arrive truly at that moment in this place of, I worked for something, I did what I could do, I'm done. At that simple moment, presence is deeply aware, deeply available. For some people it occurs during the actual meditation. You sit there and there is this ineffable arrival at a place of absolute you. It's just you. It's you at your most beautiful, calm, unprotected, undefended, vulnerable, open, joyous, simple, loving, forgiving being. And you actually, I would venture to say, everyone in this room arrives there during this talk or during this meditation. If you're not sitting thinking about it, trying to analyze, be critical, oh Bruce, you're off on a tangent, or all your shit. If you can just put that aside and just sit there and not judge or worry or try or not try or do anything, you're actually there. And the there-ness of it is so beautiful, I think, that most of you drive these huge distances to get there. In other words, to get here, to be there. And I tell you almost every time, you don't have to drive here to be there. You don't have to drive anywhere. You don't have to go anywhere. You're there. You're there. But we don't taste it. We don't feel it. We don't know it. Sometimes on our own meditation in the morning, you've had this sense of, and then you don't want to get up and get into the day. You just want to sit. But you have to get up and you have to go into the day, because that's what we do. So how do you carry this with you? Well, the truth is, it never leaves you. It never leaves you. You leave it. You get up and think, well, now that's over. That experience is done. The truth is, it's still there. You are now into mind game. Past, future. What do I do? How do I do it? What's going to happen? Oh my God, I got to be safe. I got to be this. I got to be that. All that starts to take over, and it just rides above this extraordinary space of presence. And the only thing that happens here that doesn't happen during your workday is you stop everything long enough to become who you are. It's what we all want to be, and it's what we all are. Certain things can tip you over the edge. I talk about reading Rumi's poetry, going to a seminar, sitting in satsang, whatever you choose. It can tip you over the edge. But it's truly your own journey that will get you there. It's not anything that will happen here. I cannot give it to you. I cannot impart it. None of these enlightened guys can give it to you. It can't be given because it's already there. How can you give the thing you have? And it's frustrating. It's frustrating for me because I want you to know this. I want you to know it. And I know that all of you do, in some place, know what I'm talking about. It doesn't change that much. I mean, I think you all have this feeling that, oh, I'm enlightened, now you're going to be permanently happy. Well, I've proven you wrong on that one. You know, it doesn't work that way. There's no permanent happiness, there's only what is. You become permanently what is. You're never anything but what is. You think it's going to give you absolute peace and joy. No, it'll give you moments of peace and joy. Maybe more than other people get, who knows? It may not. What it will give you is truth. It will give you reality. And if you go up against reality, you're alive. You will feel alive, like you have never felt ever. That's why guys love going to war, because it's real. You know, they come back and 25, 50 years later, they're talking about how real that was, if they could only go back to that. This is real. Every bit of this is real. But most of us are so unconscious of reality, so in denial of reality, that we don't experience what's real. And if we do, it usually is sometimes uncomfortable. A lot of reality is uncomfortable. But it's only uncomfortable to the thing that wants it to be other. And the thing that wants it to be other is what falls away. You just accept it as it is. Aha, this. And it can get really hurtful. You know, if you've been listening to my talks of the last few months, you know, I've gone through a very difficult time. And in no way does spiritual work or awakening take you out of difficult times at all. It just makes it so you can live it fully. Be it. It all borders on miraculous. And I don't know how to describe miraculous other than to say the stuff that arises when you're awake is amazing. It is constantly amazing. It amazes you, and it brings about a condition that I think is probably at the core of the awakened experience. It's called gratitude. Gratitude. You just walk around feeling this enormous gratitude, even when things don't go your way. Because even not going your way is more awakening. If I could take each of you and just hug you into this space, if I could put my hand on your forehead the way Rudy used to do and just go blast you into cosmic space that was real and not just experiential. If I could help you to find the endless, permanent truth of your being, of course I would want to do that. And all these guys I know who have awakened, that's what they want to do, but they haven't found a voice for it. It's not easy to know even how to talk about it. A lot of people just shut up. And you meet a lot of these awakened guys who just, you would never know. You would never know it. Walking down the street, you would never know it being in their presence because it's so unannounced. But if you're sensitive at all, you would look at them and you go, We had a closing party for the musical for Ghost on Monday last week. Richard, the star of the show, had this big barbecue for the cast, and I didn't know if I should go. I just didn't know. I thought, I've already said goodbye to everybody. Why should I go? And I felt really resistant to it. And I've really learned a lesson which is worth sharing. When you resist something, do it. Always. So I went to this party, and I got there almost an hour late, and I was the first person to arrive. So this is, whatever this is, Broadway, I guess. But it was so strange to me. I talked to everybody, but two people came up to me, and all they wanted to talk about was what we're talking about right now. I don't even know where they came from. One is a producer, one is an actor who's on a show, The Good Wife. And he was there, and I went, why are you here? Why are we having this discussion here? What is going on? What is this about? And I realized I came into this not to say goodbye to everybody, but to meet these two people and to have this conversation. And what I've been discovering for the last several years is people keep arriving into this space to share this unannounced. Unannounced. I don't know how it happens. And I know that it's beautiful. And I know that you don't have to say anything. You can just be, and it comes up. It arises to people who need it. And for me, it's really beautiful. I mean, it's more beautiful than anything else around. So, it can't be taught. You can't do anything. All you can do is be. And that's enough. It's enough. Just be. And what do you do if you're hungry for this and it hasn't happened? What do you do? I think that's where Rudy really comes in. Because Rudy taught us how to be human beings. He taught us how to open these chakras, breathe into them, feel the connectedness of all of these energy centers within us, how to diagnostically see where we're shut up and where we're open and available. He helped us to see all that, and the value of that, as he said, was it will make you a whole human being. That's how you practice what I'm talking about. If you can't have, or don't yet have, this awareness of awakened being, live the life of someone who does. Play at it. Practice. Live compassionately. Love people. Be available to people. Go against the thing that you think is, that you resist. Move toward your fear and not away from your fear. Find the thing that will make you a deeper, wiser, kinder human being. That's really what you do. Live the life of a person who you would like to be. And then, when the awakening occurs, rather than from schmuck to schmuck, you go from wonderful person to wonderful person. Only you're awakened. And if awakening doesn't happen, and I actually think it probably in the end doesn't matter all that much, if it doesn't happen, you've still gotten to this place of extraordinarily beautiful person. Be that person. Be the person you want to be. Figure it out. Use your spiritual practice to get there. It's a wonderful practice. And if the byproduct is enlightenment, great. If enlightenment doesn't happen, well, first of all, I think it will happen to everybody at some point, and it may be on your deathbed. I don't know where it will happen, but it'll happen. And great. But if it happens earlier, then you just get to have more gratitude. You get to see more magic and mystery and wonder. But it's all there anyway, and if you take the time to look, if you write poetry, if you paint paintings, you're already doing it. You're already experiencing it with that. So this is an opportunity, this class, this practice, any meditation practice, take the time and really find your way into enough stillness and enough presence that you can see what is. Just see what is and say thank you. That's what we're doing. That's really what we're all doing. And if you can do that when life isn't going your way, when it's not working out, when it's not the way you thought it should be, then you'll really grow a lot. And we talked about growing. What is growing? It just means opening and opening, letting stuff fall away, being freer and freer. And at some point, the final residue of who you are just goes gone. And you're there. And there is where you've always been. And that's all you know. That's what we're doing. So when you ask yourself, why should I get up and drive here to this place, I would say, one, you don't have to. Just sit and feel it on your own. But if you want a place where it's available and really, really free and yours, come, get it, take it home. Any questions?
Would you say that Satori would be similar to through the looking glass, or a flow, sort of an exchange where there's this almost like a door that opens and you go through it?
Yes, yes.
Even briefly?
Yes, absolutely. It's a door that opens to you.
Right.
And Satori just is, I think, in my mind anyway, a glimpse of enlightenment, or maybe more than a glimpse. It might be 6 months, it might be a week, it might be 2 minutes. But you have it, and you know it, and you want it again. And you think, most people after Satori think they've lost it. But it isn't that, again, they haven't lost it. It's still there. They've turned away from it. They've turned back into the old patterning. And it's completely understandable. And even after awakening, this incredible vastness of being that occurs often just comes back to being very simple, elemental you. It's no longer the walking around like, oh, it's not like that.
So we're just so programmed at some point through socialization and rules that we've lost what we had
absolutely
at a very young age.
And are supposed to. It's like programmed in.
Yeah.
And the rediscovery, paradise regained, is what it's about.
When you talked about losing Bruce, when you lost your persona, is that similar to your experience in the 60s with chemicals?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, no, the LSD experience
personality?
in the 60s was the most potent experience that I ever had, and it was a very, very long, I call it like 3 to 4 billion year unwinding of all of the elemental pieces of Bruce, and it took me into a place of nothingness, of absolute nothingness and
right.
timelessness.
Yeah.
And then somehow in the midst of that timelessness, there was what I felt was like an impregnation. I felt something plop into me, and then I divided into 2, 4, 8, and we just kept going and going, and then chunks of the universe and my body all grew back together. They all kept, the room I had been in before that trip started, everything came back together, and I came back roaring with laughter. And then after that, I just said, why did you bring me back? Why did I come back? I didn't need to come back. And they said, whoever they are, to tell people what you saw. And then they provided me with an enormous palette. I mean, I got to write, 10 movies for mass audiences that all point at this. I've never been able to give the whole picture because you can't make a movie about the whole picture. But I got to do a paragraph or a sentence, and then I ended up with a paragraph of stuff. That's what was happening. And then that took place 40 years ago, and when the awakening took place in October of 2 years ago, what was that, 2010, 10 actually, when that took place, it was like a little fragment fell away. It was like this little thing went boop, but that was all that was left. I was totally focused on it. That was Bruce, this is Bruce. And then it went, and I realized after that happened that the big job happened in the 60s, and it's been working. Rudy and all these people have been watching.
It was a similar experience of being disconnected
from
what you thought was Bruce, but it still is Bruce. But I remember you talking about losing Bruce.
Yeah,
Bruce
no, it was
there.
The Bruce that came back from the chemical experience still very much had an identity.
Right, but 2 years ago when you said you went to this seminar and you kind of like,
the Bruce
didn't exist for a while.
The Bruce that came back from that is a different Bruce. I just tell you that. It's I call it the elemental being as opposed to the personal being. There are qualities of personal being that are your history and your narrative, and that basically went away. There was the elemental thing, which is the universal quality that we all have of love, hope, ambition, fear. All of these things they play in everybody, which is why everybody's narrative relates to it, because every one of us experiences the elemental. But the story version of that, it's still there. I can access it, and sometimes it comes at me, and sometimes there's a lot of what I would call bruising happening, and it's very powerful and very meaningful. It's all part of what is. And that's where the journey of really unfolding and understanding what you are really starts to happen. Spiritual life really began for me at the loss of Bruce.
I'm getting the feeling that I've been so disconnected from many, many things through, my career, where everything was a struggle, that I got to the point where I stopped asking for things. And lately, my experience is that if I do ask for things, it's kind of like something is making them happen. I guess it's just a normal.
I don't know if it's normal. I mean, maybe it is normal, but I know that a lot of what's happening with you is happening because you've put yourself into a process now of deep, deep letting go. And I've watched that happen, and it's been pretty miraculous, actually, over the last several years. I mean, to watch you drop off so much stuff. And you've been doing it because I think you're tired of that stuff, and it was the time to do it, and maybe that's natural. As you get older and you retire, all that can fall away, but not everybody lets it go. But you have. Anyone else?
I was just going to say, it's kind of like the Adam and Eve apple, that once you bit the apple, you lost your connection to the God state. And that's what we're looking to get back to.
Yeah, to paradise,
Yeah.
to the Garden of Eden. Yeah, no, we are, but we're all in the Garden of Eden.
Right.
We really are. We're just experiencing it through very specific eyes.
So just eating too many apples.
Yeah. Tony?
Could be wrong, but I'm hearing in your talk a bit of a struggle to connect Rudy's work with your more recent unfolding.
I don't think it's struggling with it anymore. I did struggle with it, trying to understand how does it work.
How do they relate to each other?
Well, Rudy's work was very much a wish to grow, a wish for something in the future. It was about becoming other, getting to the place of other, not what I am, but I want to be deeper, stronger, better, whatever. It was a reaching for something else, and I kept going, well, that's not what I feel in this work at all. And so I just tried to understand, how does that work? And what I'm trying to express here today and have in the past, Rudy used to say you can't let go of what you haven't had. And if you can reach for your best self and let go of that, it's a lot better than letting go of the crappy, miserable person you think you were. If you can build a life, if you can build somebody who can actually go and find completion with other people, who can find forgiveness, who can do all the things that make you free in the world, which is, I think, a big part of what I would call Rudy's work, that leads you to a wonderful doorway. And that doorway, if enlightenment or awareness or awakening occurs, it will be all the more beautiful. And the people I've met who have awakened and not done that, I believe still have to do it.
Mm-hmm. So what happens in this class, for instance, it seems to me, is my sense, is there's a transmission that does happen. From any real teacher, there's a transmission. Okay? And I guess I'm asking, the transmission that happens in terms of chakric opening and the transmission that happens in terms of there's nowhere to go, is that the same transmission, or are those two different transmissions?
No, it's a really interesting question, and it really is gradations. There's pure presence, and anyone who sits with presence, I don't care who you're with that has presence, it will infiltrate.
I mean, Rudy had presence.
Oh, absolutely, he did.
He may not have had the kind of enlightenment you're talking about.
I don't know, I honestly don't know, but I do know that he had presence, and that presence radiated outward. I do know that as a teacher, I have been given an ability to work with energy and energy work inside people's body. I don't know where it comes from or what it's about. It has nothing to do with this awakening. It's just something else that I do. And I can look into a person and feel into a person and see where the blockage is. And so I just can go in, and I don't know why or how, but I just do that. And it shifts. And I can feel a flow. So it's kind of part and parcel of what we're doing. It's helping people get lighter, freer, more available to themselves. It helps them to become better human beings, better spiritual beings. But will it awaken them? I have no idea. But it definitely is something that goes on. And I do it to the enlightened guys as well as to the unenlightened guys. You know, it's something I can do. And look at, I mean, it sounds like it's interesting, like like it's got a magical quality, but I go to a physical therapist for my neck. And she works on me, and I think she's a magical person. She just knows how to go in and move tensions and things that are inside, and she's trained, and she just does it, and she can feel. She says, "Oh, you're a lot looser today, and I can get a lot deeper," and that's exactly what I feel. You're looser today, and I can get in, or you're totally asleep, and I can't get in. I see what's going on. I do my best. I try to undermine what's happening. I try to make something better from what arrives, and that's what I do. And will it all lead to awakening? I have no idea. But when it does, it won't change the fact that you'll still have pain and you'll still have blockage.
But at the same time that you're doing that, you're also providing some access to
Presence.
To nowhere to go. Presence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know this is an unusual mix of things. Every person who has awakening will present it and be part of it in their own way. This is what I was doing before enlightenment. I was teaching Kundalini Yoga. After enlightenment, I'm teaching Kundalini Yoga. So I'm doing energy work, but this basic presence now infuses it with something that wasn't there before. It actually was there before, but I wasn't aware of it being there. Enough? Okay. Thank you guys for coming. As you know, we'll be gone for 2 weeks, and we'll be back on the 23rd. And then, and Blanche has asked me, anyone who's come who's new, who would like to be on the list of knowing when class is being held, you can just send us your email, or send Blanche your email, and you'll be on the list, and we'll be able to inform you. If once was enough, that's fine. You don't have to get on the email list. But thank you guys all for coming. I really do appreciate it, and it's great meeting all the new guys. Thank you.
Thank you.